And welcome, everybody. It's the big guy, Scott Ferrara. It's Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt, and it's episode 202 of the Rugby Rant. Hammer, how you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's great getting back into the swing of the MLR season. You know, I never feel like I'm really back into it until I walk into that tunnel at SeatGeek Stadium and just get a feel and a vibe. And I just every time I do it, I never get tired of it. It always gives me a little bit of juice. It always makes me excited, and it's always fun to get back in the stadium.
Absolutely. Hey, glad to see you on the broadcast. Obviously, love your sideline. You know what you do.
How did it come off? I haven't gone back and looked at it.
It was good. No, you look great. And this is one of those production things, right? You know, Hammer doesn't necessarily get to make certain decisions, but I guess they were in your ear to try and talk to Dylan Fawcett when they were going to the sheds at halftime. Like, we know Dylan. Between those 80 minutes, you don't really talk to Dylan. And I think a note you should send back to whoever's, the production company. Maybe they should want to talk to a guy nicknamed the Butcher at halftime because he was not happy. It's one of those things where I even when they do it in college and the pros, like the coach, one thing, but the players don't think you should be doing it. In my opinion, put this way, if it was one of those situations where he was injured on the sidelines, it's different. He's in a sling, he's not dressed, whatever.
Well, and I think it was a confluence of a couple things. And first of all, they wanted to get him on because obviously the moment, right? It's his 100 cap, and they wanted to capitalize on that. That being said, I'm not saying this about Dylan in general because Lucas was not super thrilled with me stopping him either. He's like, "Hey, let's get going." On the same token, too, I just think that players, teams, the whole league has to realize and recognize if we want the quality to go up and we want people to be intrigued and engaged, there's a little bit of give and take there. And so I think part of it is maybe just the team assigning somebody. And the reason it's different for me from the NFL is because the coaches are on the sidelines in the NFL. So it's real easy to catch the coach. And a coach is much closer to the league level than a player. And the league can say to, hey, coaches, whether it's Latham or whether it's Greg Cooper, hey, we need you to touch base with their sideline guy if they want to talk to you. They're not there in SeatGeek Stadium. If you noticed, I watched the LA game, and in the LA game, Stephen Hoyles, because it's such a smaller venue and it's much more like a high school stadium, he came down field side and they didn't even have somebody interview him except for the broadcasters that are back in Indy. They just gave him a headset. So it worked out okay. So it's a little different vibe when you get a bigger stadium where coaches are
I think, I think what the thing is what they should do. I mean, like for SeatGeek, like if you have a venue like that, since I've been there, you have a podium, right? When you go through the tunnel, then the two locker rooms split, but there's kind of a big area where those doors are, and then when you walk to locker rooms, have a small podium there with the headset, and just have as halftime's going around, you have a PA go out there and grab Latham or whoever's there and just say, "Hey, put on the headset for 2 minutes before they go in." Because usually they're headed down with as the halftimes as the time's winding down, they're usually already coming down the stairs anyway.
I can find him there, either coach there, right? The problem is that at that particular stadium, I don't have access to a wireless setup, and the cords aren't long enough to go all the way back in that tunnel. And it's a byproduct of the airport being in its proximity to that particular location and some of the technical issues that they have.
It'll knock down the airwaves. Yeah, it'll knock down the waves.
Yeah. So I don't know all that's going on there, and that's part of the issue. That being said, I will tell you that Luke White was super awesome.
Oh, and Luke's the best.
Right. Now, and I'm not knocking Butch, I'm not knocking Lucas. Both are great and affable and wonderful people. And I know them very well. It's just that, like you said, Luke was a sub, right?
Yeah.
So he was much more in an easy position to be able to provide that interview coming out of the sheds rather than a player that was actually had been on the field and was getting ready to go back on the field.
And maybe that's what you need to do. Maybe that's what they need to do in the future is to identify a reserve or a sub that hasn't gone in yet, and
that's on you're not wrong, and that's on me.
But it's also kind of new. Like we weren't really doing halftime interviews last year, so It's one of those we're gonna figure it out. I just brought it up because it was interesting. I don't think anybody did anything wrong.
No,
the reactions you got from Lucas and Butch were bad. I'm just saying. I think we talk about being open and what we can change to make it better. So that's why I want to bring it up, because I want to know what you think.
Yeah, no, it's a great point.
Sure and would agree.
Part of it's on me now that I know, now that I have a little bit more better sense. I'll probably look to touch base with a sub player coming out of the sheds, or
look for a lock, look for those loose forwards, look for the back that's going to go in at 65 minutes, and talk
or
to them,
one of the other coaches that might be on the sideline.
And let's be honest, the perspective of the sideline is always a little more broader than being in the match. So maybe you can get a little bit more of a detailed answer. Although if they're media trained like we know they are, you'll get the stock, Patrick Mahomes answers.
I thought Luke White, in his answer to me, was really good. Coming out of the sheds, and it would have been good to get it on camera. I think he was pretty raw and honest, but it was a good response.
No, absolutely, and like I said, I just brought it up because I figured it would be interesting for me and you to talk about and flesh out, and
100%.
We don't often get to talk about things like that from a perspective of somebody on the show actually doing it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So super happy with that. So listen, week 2 is in the books. We'll be talking about that as our rant topic. But before we do that, we have our Around the Pitch. Hammer time.
I want to throw a shout out to 2 teams here in the Midwest, both the Indianapolis Impalas and the Chicago Blaze, who are moving up to Division I in the fall of 2025. I'm real excited for this for a number of reasons. One of which is the Chicago Blaze provides an opportunity for guys who are living out in the suburbs, aren't necessarily in the city, to get access to a D1 team. So it makes the number of D1 teams in the Chicago area to 3, along with the Chicago Lions, Chicago Griffins. And we know how successful those teams have been. So hopefully the Blaze, after this run here in the playoffs for the D2, will be successful, and they'll be able to build upon that going into the fall. And congratulations to the Impalas. They're also having tremendous success in the Midwest as a D2 team. It's kind of interesting, though, is that as I thought about this, the conventional wisdom was suggesting that, if an MLR team comes into a city, they're going to take away from the quality of teams around them, the club teams around them in the city. And in fact, that turns out to be not the case. We've had a lot of success here in Chicago post Chicago Hounds coming into the MLR. We've had the Lions, we've had the Griffins, both have made runs into the Elite 8. The Blaze are in the D2 Elite 8, now moving up to D1, the Impalas. The fact remains that I think that bringing an MLR team to a city where you have some Division I teams actually raises all boats with that tide, because it gives an opportunity for those Hounds players to go out and coach in and amongst the community. It gives, the coaches are out there developing rugby in the community. We know that Simon is out there in DC doing a lot of work in the DMV area. Simon Cross, that is. I think that we need to shed that belief and realize that having an MLR team in a city, when it does come, can actually be a very good thing for club teams.
Absolutely. New York has 3 big Division I club teams, and those is how Rooney had sourced a lot of their players. Butch, coming out of there and all that, and Dave Brakely and all those guys, Chris Mattina. So it opens up one, like you said, kind of outside the city, that suburb area. With 2 teams already kind of in the city. And it just branches out and creates that metro ring just grew larger for a Division I team. And guess what that does? That means, okay, well, all those guys are going to step up to Division I. You have a bunch of guys who are now going to step into a Division II role, because you're going to want to keep that team in a division, or Division III, depending on what kind of talent you have. So that way you can have at least 2 big club teams in a division, or 3 big club teams, or 4 big club teams, depending if you're D4, depending on what you're doing. So it's a good thing to take a look. So what I'm going to talk about, Rob kind of alluded to it before because we talked about Dylan the Butcher Fawcett, is our buddy Dylan the Butcher Fawcett. He had his 100th MLR cap. Our buddy. It was really cool to see. That's a great picture. So me and Rob wanted to give him a gift. So that is obviously a cleaver, and Rob had this nice woodwork done to give him something. And the badges on there are the 3 teams he played for. For those of you that don't know, even though he was signed with New York in 2018, he was loaned out to Glendale Raptors his first year, then played for New York, and then obviously after New York folded, came over to Chicago Hounds. He is the first player to do so. He's still the league leader, the league try scoring leader. He scored a try on Sunday.
Something ridiculous, like 57 tries.
Yeah, I'm telling you, he's the overall leader in MLR tries. I swear to God, and nobody
he tied last year for the most tries in the season.
Last year for most tries in the season. 14. But I swear to God, if James Daly doesn't get on this, like I've been asking to for 3 years now, I swear to God, he has the most 50-22 kicks out of anybody in the friggin' league. I swear to God, it was like every the past 2 years, every other game he had a successful 50-22. You know, so congratulations to our buddy Butcher, man. It's cool.
Yeah. By the way, can I just throw a shout out? You saw in the picture there in the background was his dad, Brian, and his 2 uncles were back there. You can see Brian there in the gray hoodie. And I want to throw a big shout out to Mrs. Hammer. She's the one that used her Cricut to make the lettering on that, and it turned out really nice.
Yeah, look, and shout out, I forgot your buddy used a CNC machine to kind of craft everything, and Rob stained it really well. All I did was provide the cleaver. I didn't know the work, so thank you, Rob.
Next day delivery, though, man. I mean, we talked about it on Monday, and literally, hell yeah, next day, I was packing I'm sure shitting a dog. I
wasn't sure of your schedule. I wasn't sure of how, maybe it was going to come, a week later, which was fine, but I wanted to get it to you in case you did have the opportunity to kind of do a rush job. And while I would consider it a rush job because you did it in like 3 days, it turned out amazing. You sent me a video, and it's, luckily, he has 2 small children at home, so we keep teeth on it, because with our luck, it would fall off and cut off one of the toddler's toes or something. But yes, it is a nice cleaver.
I had them CNC a nice groove in the back, where it kind of has a hole for the head of screw, and then you slide it over and center it, and that way it doesn't come off the wall. So
that'd be perfect. Yeah, smart thinking, because that thing will come off the wall, and one of his kids' toes will look like his pinky all gnarled up and curly. But again, congratulations, the first 100 cap player in the MLR. I got to be honest, couldn't have happened to a better person. He's a great person off the field, a great dad, a great husband, would give you the shirt off your back if you needed it. Just everything you would want out of not only a professional player, but just a rugby player in general when we talk about rugby values. Rob, what's your next topic?
Yeah, this one's quick. I want to throw a shout out as of recording today on Tuesday. What is it? February 25th.
Yes.
Happy birthday to 2 individuals that are, again, true rugby men, but near and dear to my heart. James Doc Ire of the Nola Gold, who's nursing an Achilles injury, but promised me he would be back very shortly. And then former Nola Gold player and USA Eagle, Andrew Guerra, who is no longer in rugby per se as we know him, but he's living a great life, and he's out there in California with his wonderful girlfriend, Aviana, and they're having a great life. So shout out to those 2 guys. Happy birthday.
It's funny because I had messaged Doc the other day because he had he was watching the NOLA match, and he was doing a little bit of rehab, and I just was asking him how the leg, and of course, cheeky, he's like, "What are you trying to get the scoop?" I'm like, "No, just trying to be a friend, Doc." But no, he was just busting chops. But it's listen, we're friends with some of these guys, so we generally want to know what they're doing.
Yeah, and he just got engaged, by the way. Like his gal is from Biloxi, so and she's a wonderful young lady, freaking helicopter emergency evac helicopter pilot, man. She's as hard charging as he is, so
that's cool. Yeah,
kudos to them.
He definitely outkicked his coverage with that one, Rob.
Yeah,
but
I think he knows.
Yeah, no, he knows. So my next one is a little on the topic of let's get hot. So the big guy's going to get hot right here. So, day to day scrolling through our social medias, I kind of run all the social media, and obviously I want to share things that I see. Anything Wendy Young is doing for your Scrum Half Connection, I'm sharing. Anything, especially on TikTok, I try and follow a lot of the women's club teams and the women's collegiate teams, and they do fun TikToks. So I try and share them. So every so often you'll come across a meme account or particularly a rugby meme account, and maybe I've started to get that old crotchety age, Rob. I'm not sure, but I really wasn't happy with some of the content that this particular account had. Now, obviously they're hiding behind the shield of social media, so you don't know their name, you don't know who they are, but it looked like a PWR match. It might not have been, because what they do is they steal stuff and they kind of manipulate it a little bit. But to me, it looked like they were interviewing a female player from a PWR match, and then they were making comments about how she looked and how she sounded, and I'm just fucking pissed off at this bullshit, man. Because I got to be honest, why even waste your fucking time doing stupid shit like this? Because you're just a fucking asshole. It doesn't make fucking sense. It's not fucking funny. It's fucking stupid. And all it does is it teaches kids who grew up in the social media era that it's cool to do that and make fun of other people that are more successful than you in the sport that you fucking love, And I don't want to go on a tangent and say this person is a man, but you rarely see the females doing this type of shit to the other females, Rob. I mean, That's just up. That's just
females tend to be more supportive, man.
And I don't understand the bullshit. It's one thing whatever, like 2 or 3 years ago, we made fun of Wilton Rabolo because he did like a double hop over the try line. It was kind of funny. Willie's a good dude. So we did hashtag Willie no hops because he jumped 2 inches off the ground to score his try. But that's funny. It's not about him. It's not about his physical deal. It was more of, hey, he's a good dude. I know him off the pitch. I can bullshit a little bit with him, versus going out and tagging somebody taking somebody who just worked their butt off in a professional match and talking shit about him. I mean, Rob, I know you don't do as much social media, but you also, in your private life outside of rugby, deal with the kids who are growing up, and specifically that high school age. And I'm wondering, if for those of you that don't know, Rob's a wrestling coach, and he coaches the female wrestlers a lot. Imagine if somebody did that to one of your female wrestlers. It just doesn't fucking make sense. They work hard, they play hard, they put everything out there, and it just pisses me off, dude.
It's in wrestling, it's a very, very different vibe between guys and girls wrestling. Guys wrestling, I've only seen maybe one fight in girls wrestling, but you see them more frequently where there's anger, there's frustration that boils over to the point where words are exchanged or fisticuffs are exchanged a little bit. But the girls are very different in the sense that they're super supportive. So what you typically see is a girl might win. She'll pick her opponent up off the mat, help her up, go back to center, shake her hand. There'll be a hug between the two. And then when there's a lunch break during a big tournament, there will be music playing and perhaps a video board up. And there will be an entire tournament full of girls doing a line dance together.
Yeah.
And it's you'd never see that at the boys tournaments. I think it's just a different mindset, a different vibe. But that being said, I always say this to the kids when I deal with them in the dean's office. Sometimes adults are not the best role models when it comes to social media. We need to be a little bit more conscientious how we behave.
Absolutely. And you talk about, you have all these pro clutchers sometimes that talk about rugby values, and then you have this person doing this type of fucking social media, and again, they think it's funny, they think it's acceptable, and in it's in poor taste. You're a fucking asshole for fucking doing it, and everybody should be calling you an asshole for doing it. That's number two. And number three, again, it's teaching a generation of kids who grew up with social media. I didn't grow up with social media. You didn't grow up with social media, so it's a different landscape. We're not going to understand that. To me, it's like putting a stamp of approval because you're doing stupid shit, and I just fucking hate it. Just Rob, it's stuck in my craw today and ruined my fucking day.
I know.
And I you guys, I don't try to bring the show down or anything, but I just feel it's important that I say that as a person who has a platform to do so, because it's fucking bullshit, you know. But it is what it is. You're always going to have haters, and don't get me wrong. Again, ribbing, hating, there's a fine line between it. But like making fun of people personally like that, it's fucking that's always a no-fly zone, and that's never a good thing. And we have to do better to not only make sure we're not doing it, but also calling people out who are doing it. So let's try and spread that around a little bit and do that.
Let's be better.
Absolutely. Let's be better. So speaking of better, we're going to show you a clip from our sponsor who's way better at doing their thing than we are. So speaking of doing things better than we do, I got my new Macron top here. So before we get into the rant, let's talk about this nice piece top here. It's jersey material, and actually when I got there's actually instructions because you have to wash it like a jersey. Don't throw it in the dryer. Wash it inside out because it'll shrink, things like that. But it's super lightweight, and I got to be honest. So when I went to the Scotland match last year in DC, it was so humid. People don't realize DC is all swamp. And back in the day before like the modern era, they would have the reason they have these breaks for Congress and the Senate was because it would get so disgusting, and they would have diseases going through the town because it's a literal swamp with mosquitoes that were passing diseases. So being there around 4th of July, I was sweating so bad. I changed my shirt 3 times. And then by the 3rd shirt, I said, screw it. If I'm going to be on some type of video, I'm just going to have armpit sweat. I don't think I'm going to have an issue with this, Rob. This is super lightweight, dude. Nice. I mean, it's super lightweight.
Frankly, I'm a little jealous because, we got the whole Macron thing set up, and we made sure that we got names and addresses and size and all that stuff. And Scott got his gear before me, and I'm still left.
I mean, Tim might have actually delivered it to my house. I'm only about an hour away
from
my facility. Yeah. So who knows? He might have just dropped it off, to be quite honest, because I'm literally that close. I'm about an hour away.
And so that's why he's nice and close. But I got to ask, sizing wise, if anybody's looking to pick up some Macron gear, I know that a few of the teams have actually websites on Macron's. They have links on Macron's websites. Oh Glory DC, I believe LA. Both those teams have gear that you can order by Macron that look, are the players' gear. What size are you wearing there? How's it fit?
So if you are a Doc Irie, Irish Paddy Ryan, Paul Mullen size prop, I would get a 5X. It's loose. It's just loose enough. It's comfortable. It's not crazy tight. It form fits just enough. But you have to remember the way a lot of these, and this is just about everybody we've dealt with, the way they size it is like that, especially kit, is that on the field
slim fit,
authentic, which is great because when it's like suction to your tits like this, it's hard to grab. But when I'm at the pub, I don't want like my belly hanging out, really. And again, it's just the nature of how they do things in the industry. It's industry wide. So if you're really looking for that big prop size, it's a 5X. But if you're regular sizing, I would definitely size a size up, at least.
There you go. But it looks good. It looks nice.
Thank you. Super.
And you look good in it. I can't wait to get mine.
So who was the week 2 Super Brew winner?
Yeah, speaking of Super Brew and speaking of Macron, one of our sponsors that's really delivering in this case this year for all our Super Brew winners, that honor goes to none other than week 2's winner, Chris Jasmine. He will be getting the Macron hoodie, courtesy of Macron. Now, I know you got the hoodie, but you don't have it there available to kind of hold up, do you?
No, I have it. It's in my other room right now, unfortunately.
Okay, we'll show it off next week. But anyway, it's a sweet hoodie, quality what all the players are wearing with their Macron, off the field kit. So congratulations, Chris. week 2 winner. Again, anybody who wants to get in Super Brew, jump in. Even if you can't, you think the grand prizes are too far out of reach, you can win a weekly prize, and you can get one of those hoodies.
You're playing against guys like Dave Fee. Are we sure Dave Fee put in a whole list of matches this week? We should have asked him beforehand, because week 1 he forgot to pick like 3 matches.
Yeah, he has so much confidence. He's only going to start off for the first couple of weeks picking half the games, just so he can give everybody an opportunity to win. That's what he told me. So clean his clock, kick his ass, send him some brew mail, and give him a little bit of a chiding for his poor showing over the last 2 weeks. But I am getting a little bit more information about our grand prizes. I'm hearing that the grand prize will be a full-on, full kitted out Macron kit. Now, we don't know whether that's going to be an MLR kit. So we're talking about polo, we're talking about hoodie, we're talking about shorts, we're talking about pants, we're talking about everything. Or whether that's going to be team of choice. We're working on that right now, but that's what we're getting the sense. And we're also getting the sense that the second and third prizes could be some signed jerseys. So there is that.
That's awesome. Love to hear it. We'll be talking about our picks later after the rant. But before we go into the rant, here's our intro. So we're going to be going over the week 2 slate of matches. If I could say that.
Thank you, Elmer Fudd.
Yeah, that would be nice, but I did it. I screwed that up terribly. Gotta love. But yeah, we're going to be going over the week 2 slate of matches. Start off with that first match on Friday night, Anthem versus San Diego. San Diego going across the country to play in North Carolina. Anthem, their first home match of the year. And it was a tough one for Anthem, Rob.
Yeah, it was. I think a lot of people felt like the Anthem would have a lot stronger showing this year. And as we're finding out, we get the sense of how difficult it can be to really bolster a roster full of Americans. Even when you have guys like Jake Turnbull, Dylan Fortune, and some of the other individuals. Eric, we had Storty. By the way, we got an interview with Eric Storty coming out soon. Even with the quality of guys like that, it's really difficult to be competitive because, as we know, the league ups their game. Teams in the league up their game every single year. I mean, just look at like the LA game with Lafano, former Wallaby, and a couple of centers. Billy Meeks being one, but the other one being Nick Chan.
Yes.
A shoot shield winner from last season. I mean, with the quality of guys like that, it just goes to show you how difficult it is to be to be competitive. So unfortunately, they took a bit of a hiding. Can you put that score up there, Scott?
Sure. Yeah. Unfortunately, it was 52-5 in San Diego's favor. But at halftime, it wasn't it was a little bit closer, and Anthem, was really, I got to be honest, really, Anthem looked a lot better than they did against NOLA the week before. It was interesting. It was just that second half just kind of, I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah, well, it's we know that rugby can be a game where once the points start to pile on, or once a team gets up by a try or two, and then mistakes start to happen, you start to lose a little bit of that synergy, as you've talked about many times before, in that continuity. The hands go a little bit wonky, and you start to knock balls on, commit penalties, and then that big snow that snowball starts to roll downhill and gather more and get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's pretty difficult to stop that momentum once it starts.
Yeah, and it was really the first 20 minutes looked decent. You had Tavita Lepetti scoring the first try for San Diego. Then he ended up coming off the field for an HIA. Tion Lutz came on about 5 minutes later. Lepetti got cleared, came back in. That's what we like to see, taking off for an HIA just to make sure. The substitute came on. And then once he was cleared, he came back. That's when Eric Storti, there we go, scored his try. Unfortunately, Mitch Wilson missed the conversion, but was all the way on the side. It was a tough one. But then from there, you have Thomas Aoki scoring a try for San Diego. You have Justice Sears-Duru scoring a try, the Canadian. You had Marcel Brocchi take a big hit. I don't know if you saw that, Rob, but what had happened was he went to make a tackle. And as he went down, I forgot who was carrying the ball, but he went to make a step at the same time and ends up kneeing Marcel in the head. I mean, he was out. When he got up, you could tell he was like shaking the cobwebs off. So I would assume he's going to be out for a couple weeks at least. So Tion Lutz comes back on to finish out the game. Ryan James scores a nice try to round out the first half. Beautiful. And then from there, it's all San Diego. Vili Helu scores. They start doing substitutions. Shiloh Klein scores. Richard Judd scores. It's just like they just keep going. Eventually, Tion Lutz comes off again. Poor guy, he's on, he's off, he's on, he's off. But it's one of those things that finally, I believe Ethan Grayson scores the last one, kind of at the death. Ethan Grayson had 17 points between tries and kicks. Territory, not too bad. San Diego held most of the territory, 53%. Carrying meters were relatively even. Anthem actually had more meters, 534 versus 515. When I'm looking at it, things like conversions, San Diego converted 6 kicks versus Anthem's none. But again, Anthem's only had the 1 conversion. Kick meters, though. So this is a question. And what kind of tactics are you using? So kick meters for Anthem, 508. Can you guess the kick meters for San Diego?
325.
1,018.
Really?
Yes, that's according to the MLR website. So the question is, what is Anthem looking to play with the ball in hand more, and with San Diego looking to do a bit more of a kick chase? Lineouts 1-9 in San Diego's favor. Hold on one second. And penalties conceded 10-8 in San Diego's favor, but that's 50-50 really, 10-8. Anyway, continue that.
I think with the experience San Diego had, I think they were really going to be asking some questions of the back three of the Anthem, asking some questions of guys like Wilson, just to see what they were made of. I mean, we know Wilson's, he can be an electric player with ball in hand, but he's not the tallest of figures. So sometimes, putting that ball up there and seeing, putting a little pressure on him, seeing what he can do with it. Perhaps that was a bit of the strategy there for San Diego. I think one of the things, the 2 comments in regard to San Diego, number one, what kind of statement are they making right now with 10 points on the table? They've maximized not only, winning two games and maximizing their points, but also maximizing the bonus points. The only team that has done that so far in the league this year with 2 wins. So, really setting themselves up very well in the Western Conference. The next closest Houston with 6 points. So 4 points ahead of the competition after week 1. And then, I think making a statement just about the quality of their play and how they want to play, especially with the new coach, John Menendez, coming in. So it's really interesting. San Diego is making a statement early on here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I think, again, as we know, and we talk about multiple times a year, this is going to come down to bonus points and point differential. So if you can make that point differential as much as you can, especially in these early rounds, it can only help you out in the back end of the season, right, Rob? So the next match, which unfortunately I want to do a watch along, but I have some family things that came up, so I couldn't do it. Was the Chicago Hounds Utah Warriors match? Utah came into Chicago. This was Utah's first match of the season. They were kind of left out in week 1. They had their bye week. And another one where close at half, and not too bad. 45-31 win for Utah, but Utah punching the Hounds in the mouth in the first like 5 minutes with two tries. Liam Coltman and Blake McKeary. Rob.
Yeah, it was 14-0 early on, and I really on the sidelines. I had some serious concerns at that point. The Hounds responded well, and I think they went to their strength, which is met physicality with the physicality. It's one of the things Coach Cooper said in an interview pregame as we prep for the game. Is they really wanted to meet the Hounds' physicality and be physical themselves. But the Hounds showed a lot of strength in their set piece. They were stable in the scrums. They had a lot of really quality line-out ball. I mean, with the guy like the Butch and his 100 MLR caps, he's going to be hitting strikes all day. And then you have guys like Hamish Bain and Scott just jumping up for the ball. Not this Scott, of course, James Scott. So fetching the ball. But they just couldn't, they got a yellow card. And I think that's what I don't want to say nail in coffin because that was not.
It was though. Unfortunately, yeah. Charlie Abel's card. Yeah. You knocked down 25 minutes in the half. So you're in the last half of the second half. And you're down a try and now you're down a man. Yeah.
And I think they scored 10 or 14 on the back of that red card. So, in truth be told, I think that was a really death nail for them, because they were never able to get on top of the scoreboard. They always seemed to be playing from behind at that point. And then they're at they were within 7 within the last 5 minutes, and they let that last minute try go by as they, were really trying to put some pressure on and make the comeback.
Yeah, it looks like it was 10. It was a penalty goal. And then it was a try and they converted. I do have to say, we talked about last week, Anthem, Keene had a cheeky try up the middle a la Cam Dolan against NOLA, right? And Nate Osberger starting the Hounds try, the Hounds scoring in the first half, I think it was the first 10 minutes, had another one where nobody seemed to be blocking the A gap. He ran about 20 meters. And oddly enough, Utah was talking to the official like he was offsides or something, but there was just, if you look, there was just literally nobody guarding him and nobody in the backfield. It was just a straight defensive line. You wouldn't have anybody back there to defend a kick anyway. Let's be honest. You're too close to the try line because you're just in that green zone area. But I think it was more of while they spoke to the official, I think they more looked around like, did we just screw that up? The Utah defenders, nobody called A gap, or whoever called the A gap slid over, and Nate, has a great rugby IQ, kind of looked up and went, okay, and went through that A gap. It's just interesting because we talked about a play similar to that last week for Anthem.
You can't, and it just goes to show you can't coach heart. Guys just have heart, and he has a rugby IQ, but the heart to just keep the leg drive going and get through that space and get through a deluge of people, of bodies to score that try.
Yep, and just going over some of the stats, Hounds held almost 60%, 58% possession and 58% of the territory percentage. Tackles, Utah had more tackles, but you would assume that because at the end of the match, the Hounds had the ball in hand a lot, trying to come back. So to me, sometimes the tackles don't tell the tale of the whole match as much as maybe they'll tell the tale of the last 10 minutes. Again, same thing with crossing the gain line, 53 crosses for Hounds versus Utah. Again, to me, that stat is overloaded on the Hounds because they're playing from behind. So they're not going to be tactically kicking. Kicking meters almost equal. Lineouts won. The Hounds took that 22-13. And penalties conceded, Utah 12, Hounds 8. So nobody can say that, the Hounds lost because the referee was doing anything to them. I hate when people say that, It's just, again, another pet peeve that I could talk about on an upcoming Let's Get Hot.
Well, and just one more comment. Like I said, we had spoke to Coach Cooper, but we'd also spoke to Chris Latham, and one of the things he said is defensive continuity and defensive communication were going to be keys to the game. And of course, when a team puts up the kind of points like Utah did with 45, you begin to ask yourself, where did it break down, and where do we need to improve, and when are we going to turn this thing around in that regard? So let's see what happens. They have a tall order this coming week against the two-time defending Free Jacks.
Yeah, listen, it's a fun one. It's a fun one. We'll see how it goes. Again, I think it's one of those things where we talk about Utah, and this is the way they play, especially early on. They hit you in the mouth early in the season, and if you can stem that tide, you're better off on the back end. Doing what you do. So the next one we're moving over to is the Miami Sharks match. Excuse me, which again,
Robbie, 2 teams goes down twice.
Heart attack kids, though. Miami came down to another heart attack match. It was interesting. 3 minutes left, they get the yellow card. Ben Bonasso gets the yellow card.
Mm-hmm.
He's subbed off. They're a man down. Nola gets the drop goal. Like it was crazy. It was crazy, Rob.
Yeah. It's disappointing as a Gold fan. Somebody wants to see them be successful and have build on the success from last year. But they just didn't answer some questions in regards to their defense. I thought they were a little disheveled at times in their defense. Offensively, I've always been real impressed last year, even with Dorian Jones, who was playing the 10. I mean, he had a really nice game.
He played really good.
He played really well. He had 2 50-22s at some decisive times to really put the
10
pressure
points,
on.
I think, too.
Yeah, 10 points. It was good from the tee. But and Cooper Coates, what a great pickup.
Another guy, he had 10 points as well, I believe.
Yeah, 10 points as well. Yeah, 2 tries. It really filled the hole left by Dougie Fife. But other than that, really a frustrating game. They got behind the 8 ball, and again, like the Hounds, were never really able to get on top of the scoreboard. I mean, they were early on, but then they gave up that lead and never got it back.
And interestingly enough, we didn't talk about substitutions in really any other matches, but they pulled off Luke Campbell early and put Ruben DeHaas on at like the 50th minute.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I don't know if it disrupted the flow or something, but from at that point, that's when I felt it was a little different for Nola. I don't know if you felt the same way, Rob.
I didn't. Although I got to tell you, Luke, I think Luke Campbell's a tremendous player. I think he gets to that breakdown quickly. I think he plays ball real quickly. I think he's really astute around that A gap. He's always looking to snipe and find a place if he can. That being said, I don't think there's anything Ruben did that was glaringly problematic.
Oh, I don't think it was anything problematic. I'm just saying, like, sometimes when you change that ball handler, the flow is different. And to me, it just felt like the flow changed and not necessarily for the better. I don't think he did anything wrong. I don't think it was like a riddled thing. I just think sometimes, you bring in a substitute and it changes the flow based upon how they play versus how maybe the ones are used to playing. You know what I mean? And sometimes, just like almost like if you put it when a backup center has to come in football, right? All of a sudden, there's just a little bit of a change, And it's not that they're not professional. It's not that they're not as good as the starter. Just something changes, and I just felt like there was a change there. I don't know.
Yeah, and it could also be because of Cam Dolan going off with it looked like an ankle injury. He was hobbling a little bit, and we know how good of a line-out operator he always is. So when you lose that veteran leadership, that savvy, maybe it makes it a little bit difficult to run the set piece, perhaps. But yeah.
Definitely. But the Heart Attack kids, Miami, come back with a 30-25 win. Robbie's just racking up L's over here. Robbie, 2 teams. Possession was relatively 51% to 49%. Territory, Nola Gold held a little more territory. Tackles were about even. Carrying meters were even. Gain line cross was even. Kick meter, were just about even. Again, penalties conceded 10-8 in Miami's favor, and Nola won most of their lineouts. So it's tough to lose that match. I think, even though they're away, what we know, Miami is a hard place to play in.
Nola actually lost in Miami last year.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think it's people forget that even though it was their first year, it is a tough place to play. They have a nice crowd. It's still hostile territory, So, and unfortunately, Nola now has to go to Zion Bank Park in Utah next week.
Right.
So it's 2 back-to-back matches against 2 teams that play in a hostile place.
Yeah. Well, that and have very good offensive structure, attack minded, and they can get on top of you on the scoreboard if you're not, minding your defensive structure and communication.
Last match of the weekend was Houston at LA. Houston came out the 45-28 winner. I think the second half was all Houston. They came out with like 25 unanswered points or something. LA really had no answer for them in the second half. It's one of those things, a tale of two halves.
Yeah.
It stinks, but this is kind of what we're going to see. I think, you see it in the Six Nations. You saw it in England match, a couple weeks ago where they came out. Yeah. I would say the Irish match.
Ireland match. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cause they came out in the first half and I think Ireland was leading in the first half, but it was close. And then just the second half was just far and away Ireland's victory. This is the same thing for this match, Rob. I got to be quite honest. And for Houston, because of how it started to work out, specifically right after half, they're scoring like 2 minutes into half. They get the conversion, and now they can start substituting guys. Although Johan Momsen gets the yellow, then like 4 or 5 minutes into that, I believe LA gets a yellow.
Yep.
Yeah. So that kind of evened them out.
Negates. Yep.
Yeah, negates that. Then we have some more substitutions, and it just kind of leads to our boy the Missile scoring a try and kind of just
And Jason Dam gets it. Jason Dam gets a yellow at the 67th minute.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. And Dominic Aquina in extra time, comes in and Declan Leaney got a second yellow, right?
Yeah,
his red was a second yellow. It wasn't a straight red. Yep. And then Dominic Aquina scores in extra time just because they had to. Possession was like 60-40 Houston. It's it was a rough one.
It was a rough one. In the first half, LA's up 28-12 going into the sheds. Mm-hmm. I thought that Houston played a really nice game early on. They scored quickly. LA recovered, and then Houston, their lineout wasn't working for them. They weren't able to execute. They weren't able to, to put some polish on their offense. And I think the pressure got to them in that first half. It's like I said when we were prognosticating about the season, I said, don't look past this LA team. They're going to be a lot better than they were last season. And it's in large part to their back line. Their first 4 tries, and I have not looked again at their other tries here, but their first 4 tries were scored by their back line. Billy Meeks put that beautiful ball that chipped through that was scored. The fullback for LA, whose name from I would have
Van Voort.
Yeah,
Van Voort. Yeah.
Did a hell of a job picking that up for his second try. That back line with Nick Chen is lethal. They're real lethal. The question is, can they improve their forward pack? their scrums is probably the chief concern. I think they got burnt a number of times and drew some penalties in that first half, and that put the pressure on. And I think they're lucky in the set piece, and that Houston's line out for the second week in a row was really left something to be desired.
No, absolutely. I think you're right. Interesting name not in the lineup or a sub, Andrew Coe. We know he adds a lot to that on the wing, to that back line. But I think the telling part here was their ill discipline in the second half. Total penalties conceded 19 to Houston's 8. You know, and that's not, you know, that type of lopsided number is what's going to really kill you in this game of attrition that we all love here. You know, tackles, obviously LA had way more tackles. Houston was playing the ball in hand. Carrying meters, believe it or not, relatively the same, but gain line crossed 82 to 65 in Houston's favor. Line outs won almost even, you know, so Houston is good at the set piece. I think LA has gotten better at the set piece, but again, if you're going to be ill-disciplined at you know, it's one thing if it's a tight game and you get a penalty, a one-off, but when you have 11 more penalties conceded, it's a big deal, Rob.
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody picked up, but there was a lot of to-do was made about the changes in some of the laws and the trial laws and around the scrum. Interestingly, in this game, there was actually two situations in which the trial laws came into play. One of them was negated by, was it Momsen maybe? Johan Momsen so. Coming in from the side on a maul on LA's defensive, inside LA's defensive 5-meter mark. That negated it to be applied, but it was interesting to see that come into play once, where the ball I think was knocked down and went into touch maybe. And,
yes, I think it went into touch. Yeah,
and they
went. It came back. Yeah, it came back because Johan ended up in front of the ball carrier on that before that set piece. Before in that set piece, excuse me.
Right, so in reality, at least in that game, and we'll continue to monitor this as it goes on. It really didn't play much of a role in how much scrums were used.
I think the last 2 weeks, I think our buddy James Dealey, MLR Stats, North American Rugby Database.com, has said like it's virtually the same the first 2 weeks as far as the amount of scrums that were played. I think it was we actually had in week 1 we had one more scrum than we did last year. And our boy Pierce Loban put out a nice article that people are missing the sarcasm in his title, because he alludes to the same fact. So far in 2 weeks, it doesn't look like these law variations have changed much as far as the amount of scrums that are actually happening.
Well, and as a matter of fact, I think the ball and play minutes has gone up.
Yes,
and they went week 1 only because the stats hadn't come out for week 2 because obviously week 2 hadn't happened. But from week 1, I think the number of scrums was actually more this season, and the ball and play minutes was also more than it was in week 1 last season on average for the games. So
I believe you are right, Rob. I believe you are right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's week 2 done and dusted. It's again, it always takes 3 or 4 weeks to really get to full tilt of the MLR. And with what we were just talking about, as far as the scrum variation, the law variations and stuff, I'm telling you, this is like a psyop the MLR did just to put the names Major League Rugby into people's mouths who normally don't say anything, because all the traditional rugby powers are the Americans are screwing up our game. Get fucked. We know who's pushing this charge, because you have NRL in Vegas, and World Rugby's kind of getting a little antsy because it's a big event, and they realize in 2031 they're going to be here, and they want to make sure that we get this audience. And interestingly enough, I saw a comment, and the guy was like, rugby's always been a player's game, and we should keep it that way. I'm like, great. So all these guys who are professional rugby players, just fuck them, right? Go get real jobs. Like, people are just stupid. But anyway, Rob, let's look at week 3.
The Rugby Rant's lock of the week.
So we have our first match. We have Sharks and Anthem. Again, another Friday, 7:30 match. Super excited. I like the Friday Night Lights matches, man. I really do.
They are.
Breaks it up.
Good.
I have Miami by 15. Again, I think maybe Miami comes in with a little bit of a less high-octane lineup, and maybe they're trying to do a little more kicking to do their little kick, counter kick chase game. And I think Anthem has learned enough in the past 2 weeks to know, listen, we got to step up the game and concede less penalties.
Yeah, I've got the Sharks by 17. I just think their style of play is going to punch holes in that Anthem defense.
Mm-hmm.
They're a fast side. They play fast. They play creative. And I just think they're going to put some points on the board over Anthem.
And then starting on Saturday, I'm hoping this will be my watch along match, but it depends on Friday. Maybe I'll do the Friday night one because I really do. I get excited for those Friday night matches. But San Diego again travels across the East Coast to play OGDC in Maryland Soccerplex in Boyd's, Maryland. I have San Diego by 5 again. I will always go back to this. There's historical data somewhere you can check it on again, North American Rugby Database. When more often than not, when when San Diego has to cross coast to coast, they play a little sluggish in the first half. OG's had a week off. I think they can capitalize on that. San Diego had a big win. They're kind of moving around. They had a lot of juice against Anthem. So I'd say San Diego by 5 in that one. Don't get me wrong. It could become a tri-fest in the last 20 minutes, but I think it'll be a little tighter.
I've got San Diego by 12. I think they showed us a lot in the last 2 weeks that they can put up tries, that they can be a strong side, and I think they're going to demonstrate it this week against Old Glory. Although I was impressed with Old Glory's first outing. It's always a question for me, especially early on. Do you want to really? I don't think you want to have that bye week until like week 4 early on in the season. Having it in week 2 kind of stinks because you get one under your belt and then you kind of put it on ice. You don't really get to see a whole breadth of things that you can work on during that off week. So I just think they're going to.
The only advantage is for them is they have 2 weeks worth of tape on San Diego.
Yeah, but I hear it a lot from coaches. We look at what the other team does, but we don't let it dictate.
They don't know anything. Come on.
But we don't let it dictate what we do. We're still going to play our style of game. We're going to play the way we want to play. So I don't look too much into that. I'm more worried about, getting enough of a survey of how you want to play as a team, who's clicking together, who is your midfield pairing, who's your 9-10 pairing, who's your back row, how are you going to, situate your back row, what's your best combination in the front row, and get that settled and not having those 2 weeks under your belt, I think just plays to their disadvantage.
I think that's my biggest question of the week is Ethan McVie going to start or is Connor Buckley going to start? Connor got the start in the first match. I think they both played great. I think they both have just about the same amount of skill level. And I think you're right. It depends on who's clicking at the right time. Because when you have dual threats like that, this is why you got them. So the next match is Robbie 2 times. We're going to Salt Lake City. So unfortunately, the OGDC San Diego match and the Warriors New Orleans match are both at the same time, which you would figure with different time zones they could change that, but whatever. I have Utah by 10, and again, I know they went on a run against Chicago. I don't know how well New Orleans is going to do at altitude. I got to be quite honest. You're taking the team from probably the lowest sea level going to fucking Zion, and we know that is an issue, and they don't have weeks to train at altitude, to change that. And we've seen teams go into Zion Bank Stadium and struggle because of that. So could it be more than a 10-point spread? It could. But again, I'm not sure. NOLA away is a tough one. So I got Utah by 10.
Oh, interesting. I also have Utah by 10, and we didn't compare notes, guys.
No.
But here's the thing. I think Nola showed me a lot last week. I said I was real impressed by Cooper Coates. I thought Dorian Jones played well at the 10 spot. And Xavier Mignon has played really well in the last 2 weeks. I think he's a real strong runner. He's a guy I think for me, is very similar to a Julian Dominguez, just big, strong, physical, good pace and power. Here's my question on the defense, and this is why I picked Utah by 10. Can NOLA shore up their defense against a very potent offense and back line of Utah? And one of the guys that they're missing in those last 2 games was JP Duplessis. And I realize JP I consider him a friend. He's a hell of a man, hell of a family man, all that other stuff. Maybe he's lost a step in his, as he's getting a little long in the tooth, but it's his defense that makes him the player that he is still, and his ability to communicate defensively. And I just think that's what they miss with a team like Utah. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets any tick or he gets a start just because of his defensive quality.
I mean, I wouldn't see why not. It depends on what his health is.
Tamaki's played real well offensively. He had some pretty good games, some good storming runs, but again, JP is a very stout defender. I mean, he's South African. What do you want?
I think it could stay close if NOLA can slow down the ball in play and retain possession, and I think they can work on the set piece. I think backline to backline, Utah takes the cake. I think forward and set piece, NOLA has them beat on that. So if NOLA can slow it down, hold possession, I think that 10 points holds. And then we go on to the APN match on Saturday. Is Houston is Seattle at Houston. Excuse me. That's going to be a good one. I have Houston by 5. I think Seattle's going to play tough. I think, it's always a toss up between these two teams, how they're going to play and what form they're in. So I'm giving Houston, 5 points because they're home.
I'm going with Houston by 14. I'm putting up a big number there, and I'm putting up a big number because I think they were going to shore up some of their shortcomings that we saw in week 2. They still need to work on their lineout. I'm not convinced that they're going to lock that down by week 3, but I think they had a lot of handling errors in the first half that they fixed in the second half. They play fast. And with the age of Seattle's, some of the more core guys, I think that's going to wreak havoc with the Seattle defense. So I'm picking them by 14.
All right. I respect it. And then the last game is Sunday, March 2nd. We have New England going to SeatGeek in Chicago. I have New England by 10. Again, I think the New England back line superior. I think they're evenly matched up front with Chicago. If you look at both forward packs, it's just like a who's who of guys who have been playing in the MLR for a while, or been playing together on Team USA for a while, or taught somebody how to play. Caleb Geiger being taught by Butch and all that. So I think up front they're even. And I know you're a Hounds guy, and they sign your paycheck, but I do think New England has the superior back line in this matchup, so I'm going New England by 10 against Chicago.
That's what I picked. I picked that line. I picked that team. I think New England, they've got a great back row. I think comparing packs, I think they're pretty, like you said, evenly matched, although I think the back row of New England is a shade better. I just think Toronto. I can say that. Toronto Movera. That being said, the back, like the combination of Jones, Rumball, and Flesh are feisty as hell. They get a lot done. But I think that back row that New England has is just stellar. It's I'd take them all day and twice on Sunday if I was building a team. And then you've got that midfield with New England. It just, they're,
That's what they're just, that midfield is just looking really good. My official lock of the week though is going to be that Utah match. I think Nola runs out of gas trying to go that high above sea level.
My lock of the week, I'm going to go with Houston.
I like that again. Taking them at home against a rival, it's going to be a big one with Juice. Mm-hmm. That's our week 3 picks and our locks of the week. Again, presented by Macron. You can check out Macron.com for all this lovely gear. They have several different types of hoodies and polos and what are the kids? The kids like the jogger pants and all that shit.
Yep. Yeah, and we should have a store up for Rugby Rant gear not too long from now, and it'll have the polo that Scott's wearing. It'll have the hoodie. It'll have the track pants. It'll have a pair of shorts. So we'll have a little bit of gear if anybody's interested in Rugby Rant gear, because some of the teams aren't doing Macron gear for their own team. So you can join our team.
Absolutely, and rep the Rugby Rant and put us out there because again, we're growing rugby one fan at a time. I'm the big guy, Scott Ferrara. That's Rob the Hammer Schmidt. That's episode 202 done and dusted. We'll see you guys at